Hi there, my name is Patrick Moorhead, and this is the Moor Insights and Strategy podcast. And we have an exciting series coming up here, and it is my pleasure to introduce from Zoho, Raju Vegesna. And I'm sure I butchered your amazing name here, but welcome to the show.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe a good place to start off before we talk about the topics is maybe you can talk about Zoho and what you do for Zoho.
Sure. Zoho, we are an interesting company that has been around for 24 years now. We're a private company, profitable, completely bootstrapped, global company. We do business applications, all applications that you may need for your business. And I'm the chief evangelist for the company. I've been with the company for a little over 20 years. And we look at it as our life's work. So you'll notice this trend of people sticking around with the company for decades, not just years. And that's part of the culture of the company that stands out. But yeah, it's one of the unique companies that does things the good old ways.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I had to experience Zoho to fully understand it. And not that I've been to India and visited headquarters, but you had an analyst couple of days in Austin, Texas, where all the senior management came in. I think you live in Austin now, which is cool. But one of the things that really stood out to me that was so antithetical to the rest of the business was your view on consumer and business and the business's consumers' privacy. And I heard you say it. I thought for sure, well, they're definitely not from Silicon Valley because a lot of the business plans have essentially been pulled out of mining consumer data for things like advertising. But what I wanted to do over the next few minutes here is talk on consumer privacy. Now, we have a couple more things in segments that we're going to talk over the next couple days, but we're going to start by talking about the importance of consumer privacy and maybe also talking about ways that companies mine consumer data that you had never heard of before. So maybe a great place to start is on the consumer side, really, who is being surveilled? Are these just a certain segment of the consumer population, people who spend a bunch of money? Is it everybody? How big is this?
Everyone, pretty much every single person that is connected to the internet is being surveilled, no exception. The only difference is whether you know that you're being surveilled or whether you do not. But what's guaranteed is at the back end, surveillance is pretty prevalent. The only way to avoid it is not connect to the internet.
And that's pretty tough today, particularly when even government, the most basic of government services, and I know I'm blanketing this and talking about the entire globe, but let's say half the earth is connected and the other half isn't. Of the part of the earth that is connected, most government services are available online, and that's the most convenient way to do this. So it's hard not to connect to the internet, particularly if you even have a $50 US smartphone.
Absolutely, and internet is not necessarily restricted to your laptop, your smartphone, or even if you're connected through a dumb phone, then there is a lot of data being collected about you on where exactly you are, even if you're connected from a feature phone. So you're not let alone. So I guess the surveillance is pretty prevalent no matter which country you are, no matter what device you come from, but you're being targeted.
Well, and then the big question is why? Like, I'm 52 years old. I have older kids. I'm pretty boring. Just ask my wife. And, why on earth is this the government who wants to surveil me? Like businesses, just the why do people want to surveil people like us?
Because there is a lot of dollar value that they gain out of it, right? So, what happened, obviously, during the early 2000s, maybe late 90s or so, with the advent of digital advertising, and advertising took off, particularly with Google and many others, took off so massively that nobody has predicted. And with the success of Google came a flurry of several companies that started surveilling and started their business with advertising as the business model. And over the last couple of decades, if you notice the percentage of businesses who are particularly on the consumer side, who have adopted that advertising-based business model, you can say maybe 80% of them are in that. How many consumer companies have offered an alternative business model? It's a very, very small percentage, maybe a single-digit percentage of that. So to some extent, it resulted in maybe a couple of lost decades of business model innovation, thanks to the success of the advertising-based business model. So everyone went down that path, and that meant there is a ton of money in there, because the success of Google showed that there is a ton of money. But along with money comes the greed, because the more you realize that it's easy to make money online, well, the more you want, right? So that greed kicks in, and all of that is powered by data, because advertising is powered by data, and data is coming from consumers like you and me. So which means more data they have about you and me, the more they can sell to advertisers. Whether we are interesting or not, we could be very boring, but that could means there are some other boring products that you and me could be interested in, and then they'll figure out how to sell our information to such advertisers. So that model has become so prevalent and successful that they can't have enough data.
Right. And we almost become addicted to it, where we think we got something for free when we went in and did an internet search, but the reality is it wasn't free. It wasn't free to go and do that Google search. It wasn't free to use Facebook. So we actually are paying a price. And I've heard you talk a little bit about the impact on the overall impact on society of this, because I think some people might say, hey, this is great, you get free stuff that you don't have to pay for, but there is a price, isn't there?
There absolutely is a price, and you're paying that price with the data. You're paying that price with the attention, because they are in that attention economy where they want your eyeballs. So which means they are taking your time away from you, and they are offering that to the bidders, the highest bidders, which are in this case advertisers. And you are falling into that trap without your conscious knowledge in a lot of cases. And that is sadly the case. Even unfortunately, it is impacting even the kids, where when you see that notification on maybe your device, the kids have to go and look at that, and they are training the kids to get into that model. So there is no direct monetary payment that you're making, but the attention is the key, and that is what they're selling to advertisers.
How do consumers know that they're being surveilled? I mean, is there a red light that, not a red light that goes off, but how do they know they're being surveilled, and what can they do to not be surveilled?
Well, frankly, at this point, it is so prevalent that it is almost impossible to be not surveilled. You pretty much have to go offline. But everyone is surveilled across the board. Like the moment you take the call, let's say you're taking a phone call. So the service provider knows where exactly you are because of cell phone triangulation. And it is highly likely that the cell phone provider, service provider is exchanging that data with some of these surveillance companies. So the surveillance company is likely that they have that information. Not to mention, you could be using maybe an Android phone, and they anyway have your location information all the time. You could just go to Home Depot to buy something. Well, you may be seeing an ad that is related to Home Depot because they've already exchanged the data. They are extremely efficient about exchanging live surveillance data. And consumers, in some cases, naively adopted several gadgets in the name of smart speakers, for example, where they always have a always on microphone listening to them. It's like, let's say you're going around in your house not knowing that there is someone invisible stalking you no matter where you go, that are listening to you, that are watching you through various ways, and whatever you're browsing, everything is being tracked. And the only way to avoid it is basically be conscious on what you purchase, where you visit, be conscious on your settings on how you can block certain things, be very strict about it. You can control it to a certain extent, but it is almost impossible to avoid it because there are hundreds of billions of dollars riding on it. So they are obviously trying to be more smarter than you and me.
Yeah, I've seen articles of journalists who have tried to not be in either Apple or Google or Android sphere, and it's very hard to disconnect without turning GPS off and turning data off. It's very hard to do that. So I'm curious, are there certain I understand that Zoho has some consumers who use your services, but a lot more businesses. You're a lot more business focused. Why does Zoho care? Why is Zoho's chief evangelist talking about consumer surveillance? Why does Zoho care? I mean, it's kind of a loaded question because meeting your founders and meeting all of you, but it's really more. It's a lot on principle, isn't it?
It's principle. It's about bringing awareness. End of the day, what is the purpose of being in business? Right? You have to ask that fundamental question. If it is purely about making money, that is less interesting. And there is the financial motivation versus a moral motivation. In this case, you can be extremely or financially profitable but morally bankrupt. So now, what is, as a company, if we have some moral values, why not communicate that? In this case, we know that this is going on. From a business point of view, we take a moral stance. And then that is a business side from a business point of view, we can take that stance. But from a consumer point of view, there has to be education out there. So which means we are taking this initiative to start educating the consumer to be aware of the pitfalls that are ahead, because the businesses are getting really smarter in extracting whatever they can from these consumers. Yes. So we are taking this initiative to educate the consumer, though we don't have any product to offer on the consumer side. The consumer has to be aware of all the pitfalls that are in front of them. These are all landmines. And without that awareness, it is going to go too far. And it is already gone too far. And that education is needed. And that is the reason we are trying to be vocal on this topic.
Yeah, it's funny, when I heard you describing it, I had one of these, well, of course, I get it. And the other thing to sometimes forget is all consumers aren't business people, but all business people are consumers. And the other, right? So increasing awareness across consumer is you're increasing awareness across business. So I get it. So let me ask you, I mean, can you talk about very specifically what is Zoho doing for consumers to either educate or creating your product so it doesn't surveil them?
Yeah, so we have one, we are educating the consumers about it. Two, all our applications are free for consumers. That is, with no questions asked. We have had a free edition for all our products, be it an Office suite or an email. You can get in at Zoho email address. But one thing you'll notice across the board is none of Zoho products have any ads, zero ads. And we do not sell customer information to any third parties. That is equally important. So when we offer a free application, it is a genuinely free application with no strings attached. And then we don't sell that information to advertisers to whatnot. Because in a lot of these cases, your business model defines a lot of these. If business model is dependent on ads, then you make all kind of compromises to collect information and then sell. And then you want to extract and so-called maximize whatever you have. If you have, let's say, tens of millions of users, well, you could generate revenue out of it. But when your business model is not dependent on that, and if you build your business that is independent from such a model, then you can do it in a genuine way. And that's what we are trying to do. For consumers, our products, pretty much 80-90% of our offering are free. And on top of it, we say that is a commitment we make. We basically say, we don't own your data, you do.
Right.
We'll never sell your data to anyone, period. And then we'll never do advertisements on Zoho. And we have a 24-year history to prove all the three. And that's basically our commitment.
It sounds very unique. It took me a couple inoculations of understanding your business and meeting your founder and executives like you to finally get it, because I'd never really met a company like Zoho before. But listen, I appreciate you coming on the show, Raju. I really appreciate that. I feel like we've got a pretty good holistic understanding. I know we could go into details and talk about this for 5 hours, but our audience won't hang in there for 5 hours. But I appreciate this, Raju. And for everybody on the Moor Insights and Strategy podcast, this is Pat Moorhead, founder and principal analyst. Next up, we're going to talk to Raju about business privacy and what it means to businesses and the customers of those businesses. This is Pat Moorhead. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Uh-oh. It's interesting. It won't let me stop it and come back in. So I'll edit it in one contiguous stream. Okay.
Okay.
It's okay. You good?
I'm good, Patrick.
Good. Yeah, man. You do this for a living. You're awesome at it. Okay. Let's go into the next one here. On three. 1, 2, 3. Hi, this is Pat Moorhead with Moor Insights and Strategy on the Moor Insights and Strategy podcast. And I'm Patrick Moorhead, your host for today. And I am so glad to have again on the show from Zoho, Raju Vegesna. Good to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Patrick. How about you?
Good. Yeah, we had a really informative show talking about consumer surveillance. I love surveillance. It's much more impactful than privacy, right? Like consumers literally are being spied on. And what we talked about last time is the ways that companies do this, how you know you're being spied on, which pretty much is you turn on an electronic device and you connect to the internet or just GPS and you're being spied on. And we also talked a little bit about what Zoho does, right? Zoho isn't just talking the good game here. They're actually doing something about it. So thanks for coming back. I appreciate it. I didn't scare you off. The next thing that I'd like to do is talk about business surveillance. And but maybe before we jump right in, Raju, for those who didn't catch the first installment, can you talk a little bit about what you do at the company and just a little bit about the company itself?
Sure. Zoho is a company that has been around for 24 years. We do business applications where you can run your entire business on the platform, from website to email, hosting to accounting to whatnot. And I'm the chief evangelist of the company. Been lucky to be with the company for over 2 decades, and we are globally headquartered in India, but we have presence in over 180 countries.
Yeah, I really got an eye opener when I had my first analyst day with all of you in Austin. Thank you for coming to Austin. I didn't have to travel to India, but at some point I hope to get there. It's a real eye opener. I mean, just a very heartfelt company it felt like a company that really wanted to do good for society. And I know that everybody talks about that, but by your actions, including things like surveillance, I really think you're living up to that. So let's talk a little bit about how does business surveillance different from consumer surveillance?
Well, a lot of attention has been paid to the consumer surveillance, but there is similar thing going on the business side, which not a lot of people pay attention to. Because typically on the consumer side, majority of the businesses and the business models focus on advertising. But when it comes to business side of things, it's not necessarily advertising. Typically, they're paying for services or products, but still there is surveillance going on to pull information together about various business users out there. And because it is not advertising-based business model, it tends to get ignored. But there is an equal amount of surveillance that is going on in the business that is often ignored. Let's say you submit a form to a business saying, hey, I'm interested in your service. And you may be entering maybe a name or a phone number and an email address. What's going on underneath, behind the scenes is incredible. They pretty much are trying to get all the information about you, and they're building a profile about you. And before they respond to you through a call or an email, they know a lot more information about you than you have let them know. And all of this is thanks to all the surveillance that is going on behind the scenes by several businesses out there. And there are several vendors and billions of dollars at stake that are empowering that surveillance system out there.
Can you talk a little bit about who the players are? And if you don't want to mention their names, maybe just describe them. I mean, you've got data platforms, you have data integration that's being done, and the speed at which it's done is incredible. Leveraging global cloud networks to be able to do data aggregation, all of that. So who is it? Who's doing this?
I mean, there are a lot of data platform providers. In fact, there is a terminology like data platforms, as you said, data aggregation services and whatnot. And if you look at their website and description, let me pick up a name, let's say DNB, right? You go to their website and look at the description out there. They take pride in the depth of information about businesses and individuals and business professionals, and then the breadth of information where they collect information from literally thousands of sources to aggregate that information. So when you look up an email address, they will likely have more information about you, the user. And it has become that data aggregation, which is essentially surveillance, but you had to make up onto it and call it data intelligence or whatever. And that's going on from every vendor or majority of the vendors do this. Oracle has this. Oracle also recently acquired someone. Salesforce has it, and recently there is, I think, a lawsuit from European Union against Oracle and Salesforce about this, precisely this, where they have a ton of information and about billions of users, and it is part of that broader so-called value they provide to other businesses.
Oh, interesting. So they're actually Fortune 500 CRM companies engaging in this type of behavior. I think I saw an article or a website where you can actually go put in a URL and see the people who are surveilling you. Isn't there a website out there it can do that?
Yeah, you can go to something like builtwith.com and you enter a website URL out there. Let's pick a vendor out there and look at all the embed codes that they have in there, and that tells you how many trackers are embedded on that particular website. And which means not only this particular vendor has information about you, but other 20 trackers that are out there also know that you have visited that website. And you as a consumer, unless you are putting a conscious effort to block those third-party trackers, you're going to be tracked.
That's interesting. Now, what if I'm using like an HCM system? Does that mean that they're spying on my employees as well?
Well, if you have information, what will be interesting to see is the software that you use and what are the trackers that are behind the software. That is the key. Like, what is being tracked is interesting. Let's say a simple application may have Google Analytics embedded in there. Now, it's not only this vendor that knows about it, but Google also knows about your activity within that particular application. And then where is that application hosted? Is it hosted in, say, Amazon Web Services or Google Cloud or someone else? Well, there is another vendor that has a advertising-based business model, and all cloud providers have advertising-based business model. They also know about your activity. So if you look at it right from the where this application is hosted to all the way to at the consumer level, everything is being tracked, because your business might be using, let's say, a DNS provider. That DNS lookup likely is going to some of the DNS service providers. If you look at who the DNS service provider is, likely a Google or AWS and whatnot. They also know which websites you're visiting. They also know the various other things that you're doing, various other tabs. Because of this, there are some technicalities. They can not only know your activity on the particular tab for that particular application, they also can tell you what other tabs you have open at this particular time.
My gosh, I had no idea. And I'm supposed to be a tech guy. I've been in this industry for 30 years, and I'm learning something right now. I'm a little bit embarrassed that I didn't know that, but I did not know that.
Majority of the browsers do allow it today, unfortunately, and they can tell you information and other sites that you have visited, and then it is likely that other sites you have visited also have the same thing embedded. I mean, how many websites have something like Google Analytics embedded, which means Google knows a lot about you, and then where you're going from. Look at all the browsers out there. Let's say you're using Chrome. Well, it's like the biggest spyware out there. I personally don't install Chrome on my device because I consider it spyware. But like that, there are a ton of such security hacks that are out there, but a lot of people are unfamiliar with it. So even on the business context, you may mandate a certain thing, but underneath there is such a information free flow that is happening because there's no regulation here, that it hurts businesses. Because as an employer, you may mandate your employee to use a certain software, and that software may have some surveillance embeds in there, and the employee is giving up their private information because the employer mandated it. Where do we draw the line? What are the precautions an employer is
Right.
taking to protect employees' information? All of these were never discussed in the past.
Yeah, and we know that most employees, I mean, I surf some consumer stuff at work when I'm on a break. Even though I'm the CEO, I feel like I should still work when I'm at work versus playing when I'm at home. But you can even imagine people who might take home a notebook if they're at work, back when we used to work at work, and take that home and do their stuff. You've got this perfect combination of the business software folks getting information on the people while they're using these business applications, and then being able to join that data with things that we're doing while we're at home. It's pretty crazy. So it's one thing to talk about it. What is Zoho doing about it? You have a pretty forceful stance here.
Yeah, for example, we basically took a stand saying that we will not let any surveillance company track our users, period. So which means we got rid of all third-party trackers. We at Zoho, we take something like a Facebook like button or a Google Analytics or whatnot. Everything is eliminated. In fact, if you go to build with and look at Zoho, you're not going to find a lot of these trackers you would find elsewhere. That's because we took a stance and said we're going to get rid of everything. And that by taking that stance, we lose certain things, and we give up a lot of stuff, which means we won't be able to advertise effectively, and we won't know who has seen our ad and whatnot. The concept of retargeting doesn't exist because we are not letting anyone in, and there is no way to track those. But we felt that is an easy thing to give up compared to what is important for the consumer or the user. Protecting the user information and their privacy is more important than us knowing how effective our marketing spend has been. And we know that in the long run, if we do the right things, things will work out. So we don't care about those statistics and all of that. Sometimes it's not always about the numbers. You just have to go by your gut and gut instinct and execute.
Yeah, I have this instinct that there's going to be a lot more discussion on this, and you're probably wondering, well, gosh, we got to hurry this thing up and get this out. But I think you're going to see some changes in browsers that are going to really shake up the world out there. I see what Apple's talking about. I see what Microsoft is talking about, and maybe it's like security where we plug one hole and it comes in another hole, right? And maybe more sophisticated surveillance techniques coming up, like we're going to talk about. But let's not.
Absolutely. In fact,
we're not going to let the cat out of the bag yet on that one.
Yeah, in fact, then the next version of Apple Safari in the next operating system, they already prominently include the number of trackers in there. And I did test it out, and you'll notice that with all the prominent vendors, you'll notice 10 trackers, 15 trackers, 20 trackers. I tweeted about it where I visited Zoho.com and it said 0 trackers.
Oh,
and
I love that.
That awareness is important. And I'm glad Apple is taking a similar stance as well on the privacy. And on the business side, we are taking that stance. And that awareness is needed. And I hope browsers evolve into it, because it should not dilute the message of privacy. Ironically, I've seen Google talk about privacy. That's a different discussion altogether. But I hope businesses, particularly in the business side, take this seriously on some of these, and certainly should block a lot of the surveillance.
Very insightful stuff, Raju. We are at time here for our audience. I'd like to thank first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show, and I'd like to thank our audience for sticking in there. If you like what you heard so far, press that subscribe button, and thank you very much, Raju, for coming on. Next, we're going to be talking about a new kind of surveillance called adjunct surveillance. So with that, thanks and have a great one.